And I thank you, blessed hearts, and please take your seats. Michael is with you. And I thank you, blessed hearts. I thank you, albeit the numbers of you compared to the mass of humanity that is upon the surface of your planet, albeit the numbers of you that have the knowledge and the sacred fire are small, you are making a tremendous difference. And as I, Michael, come to you today, dear hearts, you know what has happened and is occurring on the eastern seaboard of the United States of America. And you also know that in your own land of British Columbia, that you had an earthquake some 700 miles away from the crystal city of Vancouver. And I wish to use these two events to show you the difference that you are making. Yet let me first of all say to you, it is very important, as all of you have come to discover your spiritual hierarchy, and to know it is necessary for you to use your free will, because you have discovered that I am real, and I am capable of speaking through anyone who is trained to carry my voice. And for you, dear hearts, to anoint yourselves with the known power and ability to reach up to your ascended and angelic family that you have come to know. And you have come to know that we have powers. And if we could get those powers into your atmosphere, if we could get them into your planet, into the structure of your planet, we could stop all planned destruction. Now, blessed hearts, I've said it once, I'll say it again. There has been a dark side that has almost ruined life upon this planet. And we have sought to take out some of the mysticism and superstition and gobbledygook by clarifying to you that when we use the term sinister force, we're not speaking of any negative black alien from outer space. Get serious. We're talking about the discordant creation of your people. We're talking about the selfishness and the destructive activity of people that has generated a very sinister force in your atmosphere. And because it comes from the people, well, it seeks to return back to the people. And the way that it does that is it finds pawns. It finds people who, for whatever reason, have become so weak, or they are completely selfish. And then that sinister force localizes itself into their consciousness and then acts itself out in them as tyrants and dictators and warmongers and so forth. Now, I brought to your attention before that between World War I and World War II, now this was a planned attack by the sinister force, who were very happy to cooperate with a few individuals on your planet. And these few individuals, they were the leftovers. They were the leftovers of what I would simply say 12 families that have governed this planet and controlled life on this planet generation after generation after generation, and have kept such darkness upon this planet. So by the time of the 20th century opening up, my angels had seized many of them, because an hour for us to provide some intervention had come. But you still had enough remnants of the original 12 families, and some of you have even read about this. And so those families that controlled things were very eager to go along with warmongers and redistribute the wealth and change the boundaries between nations and countries and carve it all up amongst themselves. And so World War I was planned, and it occurred. World War II was planned, and it occurred. Now, they wanted only 10 years between those two wars. They had to wait 21, from 1918 to 1939. So they got one war, they got two more, they slaughtered peoples by the millions, they caused horrific bombing of the surface of your planet, horrific toxification of the atmosphere of your planet, and then the catastrophic creation of atomic weapons, which today is leaking radiation into the caves and canals and structure of your planet. So they had in mind to bring about World War III. And that World War III would not take the 21 years. That would happen in 10 years. So if World War II ended in 1945, they were anticipating World War III when? 1955. And of course, if you go back to that time, for those of you who have been in the body a few more years, then you know that during that time there was the big buildup of communist forces reaching across Asia, and tremendous building of communist forces from Russia that was forming the Soviet Union and placing all of that area, the tremendous Eastern European nations to Russia across Asia, in the iron fist of the most horrifying red energy that I, Michael, have ever seen. All under the label of communism and socialism. So don't you ever come to me and invite me to reconsider if there's something positive in communism or socialism. Because I won't listen to you. Because I know the truth and I know what I've seen. And I also know, dear hearts, that when the mighty Saint Germain introduced to America the idea that God individualized itself as each of you, and you have forgotten this, and began to awaken some of the American people and other peoples around the world that began to hear of the Ascended Master teachings in the I Am Presence. And then, of course, Saint Germain, he knew that these horrific wars were coming. Throughout the 19th century, in the 1800s, Saint Germain appeared all over Europe, warning every monarchy. In the 1700s he appeared. He appeared to the French king. He appeared to the British monarchy, begging them to allow him to teach them how to bring their peoples into a divine way of living, to avoid the shadow that was reaching over this area. Of course, no one would listen. And so what happened? Saint Germain said, fine. In the divine plan, there is one nation. That's the saving grace. If the Europeans, the Chinese, the Afrikaners, if they will not listen, we will create a new nation. We will create a new nation where peoples of that nation, they are immigrants who've come from the old world, tired of tyranny, dictators, religious tyranny. And so it was always the plan. If the eastern part of this planet turned against the light, then there would be the three Americas, protected by First Nations people, that would be a land of promise. And you know, dear hearts, you've heard some of the story, that the plan of the sinister force was to bring about a third world war, and the third world war would be the destruction of the United States of America. The sinister forces, whether they've been through war machines, communism, or modern day terrorism, know if you can take down America, you will take down the crown of America, that is Canada, and that represents the crown of justice. And if you can take down America, you take down Canada, you take down Mexico, and the rest of the world becomes the control of the tyrants of the dark side. Now that was their plan, and that didn't happen. Now why didn't that happen? Because people just like you. From the late 1930s into the late 1970s, students who found the individualization of God, their I am presence, students who discovered there was a spiritual family living in realms of light above the earth, and began to realize the powers that we had, and they started inviting us to come to the earth. And we knew, I knew, Mighty Hercules knew, the great divine director knew, that before we could even begin to provide some of the greater protection from the hordes of darkness that have visited this planet, we knew we had to clear out a group that were playing havoc on the people of earth. And they're what you call in your common language ghosts, poltergeists. Well, who were they? They were people. They were human beings who'd become so destructive that when they died, they didn't have enough light to get back to the realms of light. And we give them a technical term. We call them discarnate entities. That's the technical term. They didn't have enough light to get back up. That's what you do. That's what you've created. You've created this wheel of birth and death. And at the change called death, you're supposed to leave here and go up to the plains of bliss, rest, and try it again. So this is the biggest thing that was driving the sinister force and all darkness on this world. People who'd become so hateful and destructive, and when they died, they couldn't go back to the light. So they hung around down here as poltergeists and ghosts, etc., and they would feed off the emotional body of the people of earth. And they would appear as demons and all of these things and devils. I am Archangel Michael. I've been everywhere in this universe. I've seen no fallen angel. The concept of a fallen angel insults me. I've seen no Satan. I've seen human beings become Satans. I've seen no devil. I've seen human beings become devils. Everything that is presented in the dark side is some cosmic evil. It is nothing but human creation. It's the worst that humans can be. And you, blessed hearts, are becoming the best that humans can be. And with Mother Akasha's determination and the intervention of your ascended family, you will even leave the cloak of humanity that has almost smothered your consciousness. You will leave that behind. You will liberate the magnificent God I am beings that you are, and then you will release that power, and you will raise your people into this great seventh golden age. But until we get there, you need us. Now, as Mother Akasha has said, Michael's very interested in you. I and the great cosmic being Lord Astria, when we saw the students of the early I Am activity, and we saw that Saint Germain had convinced them, unlike the people over in the East, Saint Germain convinced them of the potential for dire consequences if some people of Earth don't turn towards the light and become illumined as to what's up there. And so when I saw that, and I said to Saint Germain, you know, the first thing that we need to clear while we protect America, yes, we knew that World War III would be devastating, and it didn't happen. And why didn't it happen? It didn't happen because of people like you. People like you in the 1940s and 50s and 60s and 70s that made the difference. They listened to Saint Germain and others of the family of the ascended host who said, you got problems on the earth. You got destruction, you got planned destruction, and in your awakening, you've got to make a difference. You've got to serve. You've got to do everything to learn about your angelic host, and then talk to them, invite them. And that's what those students did. We were able to protect America. And I tell you, dear hearts, in that formation of the People's Republic of China, you do not know what was planned. You know that China got to the Tibetan people, and you know these people have suffered. But what you don't know is that Mao Zedong, once his ego had become so swelled with the power, he planned on going right through and continuing from Tibet all the way into India. Because somewhere these communists knew that India would stand with America. That India had a history of being a spiritual nation, and that spiritual nation must never rebirth. And their claws were to come down through Tibet and swell over India. Did that happen? No. The plans of the Soviet Union were to reach not only from Eastern Europe all the way across to France and to the United Kingdom. Did that happen? No. So when I said to Saint Germain, we'll do what we can to protect the United States and Canada, and whatever protection we can to Central and South, we will. But I said to Saint Germain in 1937, we've got to remove these discarnate entities, because they're the ones that support maintaining the darkness on the planet. And he agreed with me. I got permission from the great divine directors, and I led a group of angels you know not much of. I simply call them the angels of the flaming sword. And I say to you, dear hearts, my dear hearts, we are prepared. If there was one more atomic weapon that tries to find entrance through the atmosphere of your earth, aimed at some place upon your planet, it is my angels of the flaming sword that'll strike that atomic weapon, and we will bash it about and evaporate it. You don't mess with my very special group. In the old days, they were called warrior angels. Well, we don't even want to use any word anymore that has that word war. So I've renamed them. They're the angels of the flaming sword. So I want you to be clear, dear hearts. I want to encourage what I see happening in this student body. You are making a difference. You see, for the mass of the people, those who entertain the 5 religions of the world, there is some concept of angels, but it's very abstract. They're not quite sure if my angelic host really exists or not. And as Mother Akasha said, the majority of them, the only time they call to us is when they have a crisis. Now, you've heard that your ascended family, they must listen to the great divine director because he's the overseer of life upon all planets of your solar system. Well, I too, Michael, I must listen to him as well. And Michael, said the great divine director, you give me more students who are calling forth the angels of the flaming sword, who are calling forth the angelic host into their everyday lives. I will consider allowing the angels to become visible to them. But so far, the only time the mass of the people call to the angelic host is when there's a crisis, an emergency. So you see, people on earth do this to themselves. But it was because of the early students in the I Am activity, we cleared your planet of every discarnate entity. Every one of them. And I say baloney to those ones who thinks that there's ghosts and poltergeists walking around. That's crazy. I cleared them all. If you lose your body in the change called death, you got to leave. And if you don't have enough light here to leave in your light body, I've got angels that are going to escort you. But you're not going to stay and make mayhem upon the people of earth. Now, are there those who walk around like poltergeists? Yes. And we've taught you about that too. They're carnate entities. They're thought forms. And they're mostly caused by people grieving. When people grieve, it's all right to be sad for a while. But you know there are some cultures that will grieve for days and days. 30 days later, they're at the Wailing Wall still grieving. And it's that grieving that creates a thought form of the one that's left. You understand? God let the one that's left go instead of creating a thought form of that one. Do you understand? So, I wish to reinforce to you, World War III has not happened. And I really wished I did not have to add one more word to that. But I do. So I'll re-say it again. World War III has not happened yet. And let's keep it that way. We cleared the discarnate entities. We stopped the planned World War III. And those who use mechanisms of war have for the most part given up on those plans. They've just put them on the shelf for a while. And now their plans to bring down the world populations of the earth are much more insidious. They're infectious. And they're not right in front of you until they are in front of you. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, blessed hearts, I am very interested in seeing what this student body can do. Presently, we in the Ascended Host do not have a means to speak directly to the precious students in the I Am activity. There are those who we can overlight. There are those who get strong promptings because they're listening to the teaching Saint Germain gave them and are acting in accordance. But presently, we don't have a voice in the I Am activity. And so we look at those activities in the world that are real and are sponsored by the Ascended Master realms. This spiritual movement under the Radiant Rose Academy is not sponsored in the Ascended Master realms. It's sponsored from the very center of our universe, the great central sun, dear hearts. So, with that, let me lay this down. Students like you have made such a difference in rolling back so much darkness. And you have seen more and more nations come into freedom. You've seen a modernization of civilization. You've seen movement on your planet from the great engineering industrial age to the great digital age that is upon you now. And this is just a beginning. And I say to you, you don't know the ascended and angelic forces that are constantly battling on your behalf. You don't know the forces that wish to use electrical, internet, digital in the most destructive ways. Why? Because they don't want the next technology to come in. The next technology to come in, dear hearts, is the great crystal technology. And that's where your earth, your planet, will teach you. The powers of nature will teach you how to harness absolutely free energy that can never be used destructively. Yes? So we have a lot of work to do. And I'm keeping an eye on this student body, and I see the planetary calls. I see the calls that you're making in your home. I saw what you all did yesterday. I say to you, blessed hearts, I do not wish you to get too involved in various conspiracy theories or various emails that go around the internet that suggest that there's some military arm of government or some secret activity that is behind all these hurricanes and earthquakes and all these things. I don't want your attention there. Of course it's happening. We told you in the I Am activity, and I'll say it to you again. Listen to us. There are planned destruction against America and the people of the world. And when you call upon us to drive our sacred fire into all that is destructive upon your planet, we are driving that sacred fire into channels of planned destruction. We don't wish you to even have that in your consciousness. It is so hateful. It is so against life that we don't even wish your attention upon it. So if you hear and you see emails fly by that this is the military, or it's a secret branch of the military that is using chemtrails and directing weather patterns, well, you know, I'm not going to say yes or no. I will say this. There is destructive activity in almost every facet of life on earth. And that's sad. And it's in your governments. It's in your militaries. You don't think, dear hearts, we have stopped. I have stopped since 1947. I have stopped 6 attempts from there being a military coup against the presidency of the United States of America. This is one of the first concerns. We have to protect. We have to allow a president to be assassinated under different terms. But we have to watch this very powerful position, not because of the present moment, but because of the future. And there have been 6 attempts my angels have foiled. And these were attempts of generals and admirals who didn't like the choices that a president was making. As you know, in the United States of America, the president is also the commander-in-chief. A beautiful constitution. So there's so many things. I, Michael, don't wish you to know the planned destruction against America. But I wish you to be convinced by now, because you've been hearing this since 1937. First through the I Am activity, and now through Akasha's dispensation. You have been hearing it, and in the years that have passed, you've seen it. And you have seen attempt after attempt against America be foiled and stopped. Certain things we could not stop. We knew that we had a hole in and around the Hawaiian Islands. We knew, and we could not get to it as fast as we could. We did not have the sacred fire. We had a wall of blue flames right down the Pacific Ocean, right down the Atlantic Ocean, doing everything. We were turning back ships. We were sending ships in directions that they didn't even know they were going, to keep their harmful effect. And we knew, we were quite aware that we could have had up to 3 breaches into America. Well, we didn't have 3, we had 1, and that's your Pearl Harbor. So, so since this time, World War III has not happened. Let's not allow it to happen. But there's a new insidious form of terrorism against America. Presently, modern day warmongers are in huge preparation to enter America through its back door, to come up through Mexico. A huge concern on our part. And I bring that to your attention so that you'll add that to your calls. And dear hearts, so we know of certain laser technology. We know the military of America and the military of Russia is leading the way in laser technology, in moving energy, and gathering and focusing energy and then directing it. So, yes, you had a horrific storm. And people might say, well, we did a lot of calls, the storm still came. Yeah, the storm still came. But instead of 100,000 people killed, you had 100. And we send those blessed angels in to every blessed life stream who loses their life to these kind of catastrophic conditions. So I have no desire in my being to lay out all the destructive plans. Let's put them all under one label. I don't want your attention going there. I don't want you to know too much, dear heart, about the destructive plans. You know they're there. Leave it to us. I have angels of the flaming sword that will drive the sacred fire into areas, channels of planned destruction that would just horrify you if you knew. That's not what I want your attention upon, dear hearts. Now, seems to me, and we knew this, Mother Akasha knew this, the ascended beings have said to you, the light does prevail, the seventh golden age does come in, and eventually the dark side that makes its way through human expression will roll off the face of the earth and never be again. And we also told you, they're not going to go easily. You know, that which is the sinister force or dark side of life that sometimes finds selfish individuals to express through, they know already the light's going to prevail. And they're not happy. So if their butts are going to be kicked out of here, they plan on creating as much hell before they have to go. And that's where we're going to meet them, dear heart. So I'm going to give you a new saying to the sacred fire. And that is to call forth my angels of the flaming sword. And to direct that to prevent all planned destructive human accomplishment. You see, this is what they want to do. The dark side wants to accomplish. They want to strike out. So call upon myself and my angels of the flaming sword to strike the cosmic Christ blue lightning force into all destructive, planned accomplishment of the human. See, dear hearts, I say it this way so that you're going to build more contrast and a greater wall between yourself and the human. Because I have to support you and come to you in a way, you are all on this path of resurrection. And so you are about to claim your victory as Christ beings and to lay down this temporary facade of human consciousness and be the first to live beyond duality. Be the Christ beings that is your destiny. So I reference this call. If you will add this to your prayer calls. Michael, I reach out to you. And Michael, I will not be like the people of the world that only call or think about the angels in times of emergency. I'm going to make sure I'm changing that. And Michael, I welcome your angelic host into my everyday life. That's what I wish, dear heart. Make it as plain and simple as that. Now, you don't know this, and my brothers, well, you know, they're not keen on telling you. Gabriel and Raphael and the others, but they're legions of angels upon which they have millions of legions of angels. They all must respond to my call. I am the first of archangels. So I say to you, I have the entire angelic host at my beck and call. And dear hearts, I'd like to introduce a new idea into you. And that is, you turn to Michael and my brothers, the other archangels, and you just welcome the entire angelic host into your everyday life. I want you to say, Michael, I will not be one of those like the mass of the people that the only time they think about angels is when they have a crisis, when they have an emergency. I'm going to include you and the angels in my everyday life. You see, dear hearts, it's up to you to be smart and understand. There's a deliberate effort upon the sinister force to make you forget about us. Sinister force does not want you remembering the angels in your everyday life. They'll never get a wedge into your life. And they'll never get into your towns and cities as long as you're there. So that's what the sinister force desires. Enough catastrophic conditions so that your attention is overwhelmingly going on and what's going on in New York and New Jersey and the various states. Yes, Turn on your news. Get educated about what's going on in the world, then turn it off. And make your calls. Right? But dear hearts, I see a huge potential. I didn't even see the likes of the angels come into the lives of the early I am activity as much as I would have liked to. So I'm making a very specific point here. Why should you be able to see angels? Why? That's what the great divine director says to me. Every one of us is archangels and ascended beings. We speak on your behalf. We say to the great divine director, wave your magic wand. Let them see us. It'll build more confidence. He says the same thing he always says. They've seen you. They've seen you in previous lives. They're still going, it didn't make a difference. It made a difference for a little while. So no, until their faith and until I can see that they include you in their everyday lives. That's what the great divine director is looking for. That you include the angelic host in your everyday lives. Not on Sunday, not just on Sunday or Wednesday, or when some crisis comes. And you know now, beloved hearts, that there are many different types of angels who are in different fields of service. Don't even be concerned about naming them. Just say, Michael, I call to you and your brothers, and maybe I didn't quite think about it in that way. And I just call upon all the angels, whatever kind of angels, come into my everyday life. My work, my relationships, my home. I just welcome angels to come into my everyday life. You don't know it, dear hearts, so maybe I ought to impress it upon your consciousness. The angelic host are your appointed guardians over physical human creation. Your ascended family are your appointed teachers and guardians of your consciousness to help you become enlightened and become once again your true self. But the angels are the appointed guardians over physical substance and physical reality. So if you'd like a little help in your physical substance of your bodies or the physical realities where form and manifestation takes place, maybe it's a good idea to have a little bit of faith and invite all the angels to come into your everyday life. Love them, acknowledge them, have fun with them. If you go to sit down at the kitchen table and say, hey, angel, if you're sitting in the chair, move over. I'm sitting in this chair. Have fun. And say to the angels, I already have faith that you're real. And I understand there's reasons that I cannot physically see you yet. So when I talk to you, angels, it's not from a place of doubt. It's just that I understand. You are here. You are the guardians over physical reality. And I welcome you, angels, into every activity of my physical life. Everything that goes on. What goes on your physical lives? From the time you get up in the morning to the time that you retire your garments and to sleep at night. That's your physical reality, and you're coming and going, attending the various tasks and events of your life. Well, you know what, dear hearts? I would like to see you followed. Have I got angels that I can send to you and follow you? And if you're followed by invisible angels, you will always be in the right place at the right time. And you will have doors of opportunity open to you. As long as you are claiming your divinity, claiming your right to life, claiming your right to divine opportunities, claiming your right to divine abundance, divine supply, you have to claim this. You have to make some noise. Well, I wouldn't get on a soapbox out on Main Street. Not yet. But I'd like you to have so many angels that just by the serendipity and the cosmic coincidence and everything that's kind of shifting and changing, and all of a sudden you are making Father and Son so proud of you. And it's like you're scratching your head and saying to yourself, my God, is my life getting easier or what? Maybe it's those darn angels. Well, I'd like you to be able to do that, dear hearts. So that's another part. So call upon my angels, the flaming sword, to drive the sacred fire into all channels of planned destruction. We know where they are. We know that there are branches of evil that want to handicap the military and use some of the military against their own governments of democracy. We know this. So, but we don't want you to know these things. We just wish to have your will. Say, Michael, I welcome all your angels into my everyday life. And I'm aware that there's destruction. I'm aware there's some funny things happening to the atmosphere of our earth. And even science is trying to justify the various patterns. And they say, well, if you go back this far, then there does a pattern. Yes, it's bigger, but there is a pattern. Yeah, I'll tell you what kind of a pattern's been on your planet, and that's destruction. And that's why there's been patterns. I say to you, blessed hearts, your planet, Mother Nature, the powers of nature, the forces of the elements, the weather, the element of earth, air, fire, the water element, they all know how to get along quite beautifully. And they all know how to shift and do what they need to do without any harm on the surface of the planet or the atmosphere of the planet. So if there is harm, if there is destruction, and by the way, yes, I'm keeping you the full 2 hours. There's no break tonight. I'll only be keeping you for another 25 minutes. So if you need to wiggle, take a moment and wiggle. So, blessed hearts, we know every situation. There's a group of ascended beings that Michael gets a report. The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of England, the Prime Minister of Canada, all three of them every morning get a report, an intelligence report. You may not know. You might have the CIA of America, and you may have the Scotland Yard and the various intelligent wings of England, and you now have a domestic intelligence wings of your own Canadian government. But what you don't know, it's all one intelligence unit. And the intelligence paper the president gets in the morning is the same intelligence paper that your Prime Minister Harper and Prime Minister Cameron of the United Kingdom, they all see the same intelligence paper. Now, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So do we. And you know there's a group of ascended beings. You've heard of them. They're called K-17. They got their spies, we got ours. And K-17 are ascended masters who, you know your ascended family are invisible. They can walk right into the Oval Office. They can walk into Ottawa. They can walk into the Kremlin. And they listen. They listen to plans. It's so easy. When you're an angel or ascended being, you can't hide. Because all we do is we follow the dark energy. And if you got destructive, evil thoughts, there's dark energy in your mind. And we just follow it. It's impossible to hide. So K-17 knows where to go. And they listen. And they come back and report to us. That's why we know the plans, the destructive plans of the sinister force. We know what's planned against America. And you've heard Mighty Saint Germain. You've heard your own Akasha and the Son. You've heard Jesus the Christ. We have all come and said some things. And we all do so commanded by Mother Akasha. And that's to temper our dire warnings. Because Mother Akasha doesn't want you to get upset. Mother Akasha doesn't want you to go into a place of fear. Well, she's the mother. She gets her way. Yet I did say to her this afternoon, Your Grace, I prefer you do not look at my words that I wish to express. I wish you to trust me. You know what's going on the planet. She said, Michael, you have an open door. She didn't read my script. I said, well, I got a field day here. But our words are not to bring about any doubt. Mother Akasha and the Ascended Family are to bring all of you to a place that you'll never fear anything again. But it's up to you, dear hearts. And I think I've found a way that you have enough acceptance that you have a spiritual family, that you have a spiritual nature to your own being that you're developing. And so but this is something I don't want you to miss one day. If you could include this in your daily spiritual protocol, your daily prayers, and just say, Michael, and if you want to include my brothers, I'm sure you know who they are, Raphael, Uriel, Zachiel, Gabriel. And if I left any of them out, I'll hear about it. And I know I did. And you just call upon us that you welcome all our angels into your everyday life. You just welcome them into your physical reality. Remember this piece. The angels are your guardians over your experience in physical reality. Now, isn't that a perk? So just welcome. Every day, I just welcome angels, every kind of angel, into my everyday reality. And if you do this every day, you don't wait for emergencies. Then, dear heart, when there are emergencies, you have a lot more power than those who wait for a crisis before they call to us. Because you've accepted our reality. And if you'll remember, wait a minute, the angels are given to be the great overseers. They are anointed guardians over physical reality. Well, that's my whole life down here, is in physical reality. And now I'm developing my spiritual side of life. But you could have so much proof. A son asked you to program your consciousness years ago with the following question. When you are faced with certain challenges, that you would say to yourself, how easy can it be? My angels, all the angels, if invited into your everyday life, could show you how easy everything can come to be. Do you understand? Now, I've got about 15 minutes to swing to the other side. I said to you in my opening remarks that I would make some references that might give you some greater understanding of the horrific storm that could have been classified as a hybrid storm. What a huge cover-up. So yes, there was planned destruction against the United States in this storm. And there's another one coming. But we're already doing everything we can to diffuse it. Now, through the calls of many of the students in the I Am sanctuaries and your calls, what was planned was such destruction against the people did not happen. Is there destruction in homes and roads and these kind of things? Buildings that must be rebuilt, lives that must be rebuilt? Absolutely. But most people survived. And dear heart, if you will call forth, if we're going to have the sacred fire and Michael and his legions diffusing the storm, whatever parts of a storm do have to get through, because there's a part of Mother Nature that we have to honor, then if you would ask that whatever way the storm does touch people's lives, it touches them in a way that brings about some illumination inside them. That makes them think. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, I'm going to try to show you in the next 15 minutes what you, dear hearts and precious students who are in the western part of Canada and the United States of America, have accomplished. Every day there are earthquakes under Greater Los Angeles. They generally scale from a 0.2 to a 2.3 point. But basically on the scale is earthquakes of 1 to 3 points. And they're every day. And you have massive populations in the Los Angeles area. You have another great population around the San Francisco, the San Fernando Valley, and in that area as well. And then you have localized populations in Portland, Seattle, and Greater Vancouver. You also have an understanding of the San Andreas Fault. You have understanding of the various faults and the fragility of the tectonic plates in this area. Yes? And many British Columbians have been caused to remember that there's quite a fault line in what at one time was called the Queen Charlotte Islands. These are the islands that are on the northern part of British Columbia. And these islands today are called the Haida Gwaii Islands. Haida Gwaii Islands. So, if you happen to be fortunate enough to listen to what some of the seismologists said about this interesting horizontal movement of this fault line, and two huge plates, and how the movement in this fault was very fluid, was the word that they used. Very fluid. Yes, the two major plates did come up, bang up against each other, if you might say, but continued to move. The movement of these northern plates off the northern coast of British Columbia is critical to maintaining the stability in the fault lines off the coast and off the west coast and underneath the west of Canada and the United States of America. What you don't know, and science is starting to understand the relationship of fault lines and how plates in one area can almost, well, just to say in a common way, can create some breathing space for plates in another area. Now, so the movement of these plates in northern British Columbia brought no loss of life. Am I correct?
Yes.
And seismologists said it was the most fluid movement in this fault line. And considering it created over a 7-point earthquake, now that's what we like to see.
Yes.
That's what we like to see. We like to see the plates in your fault lines of your planet be able to move with fluidity instead of banging and colliding and then having that vertical eruption where you have the trembling and shaking and the opening of earth and what you have known as earthquakes in the past. Do you understand? So here's the good news. Because of what was accomplished up there, you got some breathing. Let me just say it in a very common way. You got some breathing space in that precarious fault line from that really is around the lower Vancouver Island all the way down past towards San Diego. And so it created some breathing space here so that those plates, and a number of them, you see, what your science knows, but they don't tell you, is that the three large plates in this West Coast fault lines, in the three fault lines, have actually broken into several pieces. And that is because a lot of the discord and destruction, and what you have come to understand, you can have destruction localized in one area, however, where that later shows up as a problem can be in another area of the planet. What has happened in the use of the atomic and hydrogen weapon in the Japanese island has created that what you know today is the ring of fire that extends all the way down to the northern and south and northwestern aspect of New Zealand, and then comes up around, and what do you have in the center of that? Well, not quite the center. You have Indonesia. So, you know, from what occurred in the 1940s in the atomic and hydrogen bomb that was landed on the Japanese islands, this is called a horrific ring of fire. The damage is not localized to that one area. So you have this movement, and what happened on the other side actually fractured three large plates in your West Coast faults to about 37 small plates. And so they're constantly moving and banging around each other. Now, you've heard of the gas belts. And you've heard that the gas belts are unique gas belts of lubrication that the gods of your earth create to lubricate, if you will, the sides of these atomic plates, so that as they come up against each other, there's more of a sliding, there is a fluid movement of those plates, so that there's no harm on the surface. That's part of the natural blueprint of the structure of your planet. And for various reasons, the gas belts have been weakened. And so you've been all taught to call to your ascended and angelic family for the restoration of those gas belts. Well, of course, those upstairs, when we receive your calls, we look at the larger picture. We don't pour the lubrication right into the tectonic plates that have broken up. In receiving more of your calls in the last year, the tectonic plates that were so lubricated and had the gas belts around them restored was in that fault that is just west of Haida Gwaii, and was actually given a nudge. It was given a nudge by the gods of your earth that they would move once the lubrication was enough, and that pulled some space, that created space in the very precarious a condition of the tectonic plates along the lower west coast. So that was actually, you have destructive parts of science playing destruction with powers of nature. Well, you see, that opens the way for the gods of the earth to start playing with the structure of the earth in a very constructive way. So I know Mother Akasha told me, I said to Akasha, I said, have you talked to your messengers? And she said, yes, sort of. I said, have you said to the messengers, if you can't say that Vancouver is safe anymore, that you would encourage the messengers to move the academy over to the prairies? And Akasha has intimated that to the messengers, and the messengers know. They know just like that if Mother Akasha said to them, Vancouver is not safe. If I was you, move the academy over to the prairies. The messengers would do that. But you see, that's fiddling with divine plan. If that has to happen, okay. But that's not what wants to happen. There's a reason that this messenger was brought to Vancouver. Vancouver has history. It has sacred history of a former golden age when from the Northwest Territories in Alaska towards the North Pole, that you had one great nation down to what is Central America, and that was America. And in this area that is today referred to as Seattle, and even as far south as Tacoma, Washington, and into Vancouver, and as far north as Whistler. So that's the length. In a former golden age, that was one magnificent city. And it was a city in which the people were awakened in that golden age. They loved the light. They were magnificent beings of light. They communicated with the land of Pan. That was when Pan, that little continent, where the elemental beings lived that oversaw the elemental kingdoms. The people on the west coast, they were guardians. They made sure that discord at that time couldn't reach that land of Pan. It was very magical. And right where you have in the Canadian and American border, where you have the arch. Right there was the constitutional head of government. The constitutional head of government's sacred spiritual center. You see, in all former golden ages, at the center of any great seat of government, the center was not Parliament. The center was not the Senate. It was a great focus of spiritual light, a spiritual center. And that's what once existed where the Peace Arch is. Do you understand? In your cities of White Rock and Blaine, at the Canadian International American border. So you've heard before, Akasha's taught you that where there has been in the past great accomplishments, then the Ascended Masters can activate those accomplishments and bring them forth so that the energy of that past attainment can influence the people who live there now in a positive way. So this is a very important area to the Ascended Host. Very important area. And just the same way, from that area where, people can come up with all sorts of reasons as to why they live or travel to live in a certain area. And so, you've got the peoples who live from San Francisco down to San Diego. And you've got whole numbers of populations. And again, this area here was a very sacred area. It wasn't just because of immigration and shipping and all these things that Los Angeles has grown to be what it is. But I'll tell you right now, what has kept those earthquakes that are generally a 1, 2, or 3 in Los Angeles, right underneath the city? I'm not talking about earthquakes that are 200-300 miles offshore. I'm talking about right underneath the city. What keeps those earthquakes from being up to a 9? That would bring catastrophic death. I'll tell you, just in case you're not sure. It's all the beloved students in that area who are studying to become the individualized presence of God. It's all the sanctuaries from Santa Barbara down to San Diego. Beautiful sanctuaries of the St. Germain Foundation, where students gather and they're decreeing. They're aware. They know what's underneath them, especially those temples in Los Angeles. They're aware of what's underneath them. And they're calling upon mercy. And they call upon the angelic host to just drive the sacred fire and keep things balanced, and to drive the sacred fire through the destructive side of people so that there's reasons that that area can continue to exist. I say to you, if my angels and St. Germain's angels, I've got to give him credit here too, if we withdrew the sacred fire that we are blazing into Los Angeles, greater Los Angeles, especially Hollywood. And I'm not talking about just the structure underneath, but we're talking about driving the sacred fire into areas to protect that which is constructive so that it'll expand and go after that which is destructive. A lot of destructive things in Hollywood. Los Angeles, lots of destruction. Defecation of life itself. So, desecration, yes. So when the sacred fire calls in there, it's called, number one, around everything that is good and constructive and wonderful. Do you think the sacred fire comes around Disneyland to protect all that is good and constructive and wonderful? Absolutely. And then we drive the sacred fire into that which is destructive to keep it from growing. Because you see, we can't take it all. We can take a big portion of it. But we got to leave some of it so that human beings will one day realize what they're creating and clean up their own mess. We take the part and cleanse the part that if we didn't, could create catastrophic conditions. And of course, then we drive the sacred fire into the structure and into the atmosphere. You know about the pollution in Los Angeles, yes? It's not as bad. Even New York's not as bad as what it used to be. And that's, of course, because of a lot of environmental laws and positive things too. So, but if the sacred fire, if it was completely withdrawn for 24 hours, that's all it would take. Not quite, about 23 and a half hours. If all the sacred fire was withdrawn from greater Los Angeles for about 23 and a half hours, the earth would be quaking at a 9 point. The destruction of life would be in the millions. So you see what a difference those students down there that know the I Am Presence, do you see what a difference they're making? So, what happened up in northern British Columbia? I say to you, that's a godsend. But may my little conversation to all of you that live in the crystal city of Vancouver, might you put your own city in your prayers and call upon some of my angels to continue to stabilize the tectonic plates in this whole area. Now there's a very old prayer. Belongs to the old days. And that was when people didn't know about the individualization of God, the I am presence. And I think this is a good prayer. And that is, people knew about Michael. I've been in many of the religions. And they would call upon the hand of God, because they didn't know about the individualization of God, but they would call upon the hand of God through the angelics, that the hand of God would come over the oceans and come over the lands and keep everything in a state of peace and purity and harmony. You see? Such a prayer, a beautiful prayer. We know to use the sacred fire in response to that prayer. So you can be creative. Blessed hearts, I think that, considering everything that's happened, you include the angels in your everyday life. Then, dear heart, let me put the two pieces together. Then, when you hear of colossal storms that are building up, and some of them even man-made, yes. And you say, Michael, put the hand of God right in the center of that storm and just evaporate it. You have the power and authority to speak to me in that way. Why? Because you don't wait till crises and emergencies. You welcome my presence. You welcome angels into your everyday life. You don't forget about the angels like the mass of the people. Do you understand? In the beginning, they were here with you. The angels are here to help you release your spirituality into physical matter and substance and form. So they got a great part of your future, beloved hearts. How I made an impact tonight. Good. Good. So, do the people of earth have authority in their prayers? Some. It's very watered down. When we hear prayers from the people of the mass population, my angels have to register one thing in terms of whether that prayer or how much of the prayer can be answered. Authenticity of love. Do you really love your children? Or is it your own life you love? And if you're calling for protection, are you calling for protection of your neighbors? These are the things we have to think about when we take the general prayers from the general population. But the response is nothing. The response is not even 10% of what we can do for you. But you, dear heart, I'm giving you another piece of the formula. And that is when you don't forget about angels. When you include them in your everyday life. Then when you hear that there's a looming crisis coming, and you stand up and you demand the hand of God right into the center of that crisis, you have, I can't put a measurement on it. You have tens of thousands of greater authority. But you got to know, you have that ability to do that and accept that. Do you understand? There's a big show coming here. The people of earth want a show, they're going to get one. And there's a big show coming. And in every show that's coming, dear heart, every time the light will win. And if the people need a show to turn back to the divine way of life, we've got plenty planned. We know what the dark side's got planned against America, and we know that there's enough of you that we can foil enough of their plans to make sure that their desire of destroying hundreds of millions, they don't want 1 million. They don't want 1 million, dear hearts. You don't know how many people live on the east coast of the United States of America? From the Carolinas up to Maine? You know how many? 100 million. That's what they want. They want to wipe them all out. And you see individualizations. You see people that have become so weird. They become so destructive. They become so hopeless. They'll go out and do something insane. And they know. They know that they'll spend the rest of their life in prison. But they had a moment of infamy. Is that right? Moment of fame? That's the attitude of the dark side now. They know they're going, but they plan on leaving a trail of hell. So there's going to be some light shows coming, and we have everything to meet what is planned against America and India. Remember, India's the mind of your planet, America's the heart. India has learned the hard lesson of what you try to go it alone without the heart. That brought down India. And the heart can't go it alone either. It's got to have the mind. So these two nations will rise. God bless you, dear heart. Have I made sense?
Yes.
Have I been a source of encouragement?
Yes.
Cut me a check. God bless you, dear hearts. Michael has some humor as well. But that does bring one more thing. I'll keep you only for one more minute. And that is, you know, dear hearts, would Michael, would Akasha, would his son love to see a temple here in Vancouver? Now, I'll tell you something. So I can either go to the I Am activity, or I can go to faith-based congregations. There's thousands of examples of faith-based congregations that prayed and prayed that God would give them the supply to build a new, beautiful church to honor God. And thousands of times it worked. You see, dear heart, this student body, I have means and I have my own ways of making this student body stand out a little bit more and making certain people, affluent people, aware of the difference this student body is making. There are lots of billionaires that want to give. And a lot of them are just not sure. A lot of them, too, are just, it's hopeless. Who do you give to that's not going to take your money and use it destructively? It's in this, almost every day is in the news that another charitable organization in the name of charity is taking and putting the money in their pockets. Right? There's many an affluent person that would just love to give to those who are making a difference in this world. Well, wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful if you had a temple? If you had a temple here in Vancouver, it's a guarantee. Nothing could go wrong in this city. It's a guarantee. And then not only you, precious hearts, the precious students down in Washington and Alberta, or students come in for conclave, they would come in for an extra day just to go into the temple. The temple would be open to the students all the time. Beautiful music of the higher spheres playing. And students would come into conclave early, a day or two, just to be in the temple, to be in that place where they're just instantly raised by walking in. So how did many churches, many congregations get the funds to build a beautiful new church? How did many in the IM students open so many sanctuaries in America? Because people donated, dear heart. The world's going to be a tough place for a while. And people are looking for a very loving and kind reception from all of you. From all of you. And those of you who are regular members and come to class, and you see, I know you didn't get a break tonight, and you see someone that you never saw before, go up and give them a kind reception. Welcome them. You're going to change a world. You're going to be part of that great change. I am Michael. I thank you for your service. I thank you for your presence. And I thank you for allowing me to give you a cosmic example of a cosmic rant and rage this evening. Godspeed. I thank you.